Well, it's been 5 years since I started my channel, and one of the first videos was in fact my first ever game review. Now, it wasn't exactly the best video I've ever put out. It was unscripted, the game footage was captured by pointing my phone at the TV, plus it looked like I'd filmed it using a potato. So I thought I'd do an updated version. Now, I wanted to do it justice this time round, so write a script, take my time and do an in-depth review. So I didn't want to be rushing it. Ocean was one of the UK's biggest software developers in the 80s and 90s and released some great movie licenses. Games such as Rambo First Blood Part 2, Platoon, Batman the Movie, The Untouchables, and arguably their most successful game, RoboCop, which stayed at the top of the Spectrum charts for 18 months. However, some of Ocean's movie tie-ins didn't have the same success. One such game is that of Red Heat, based on the film starring Arnold Schwarzenegger and James Belushi. The movie was released in 1988, written and directed by Walter Hill, best known for gritty action films like 48 Hours, The Warriors, and of course the co-writer and producer of the Alien franchise. The film follows Captain Ivan Danko, a Soviet police officer who travels to Chicago to capture drug lord Viktor Rostovili after he flees Russia. He teams up with a loud, sarcastic American detective played by Belushi, and the two try to get along and work together to bring down the gang of drug dealers, the Cleanheads, and apprehend Rostovili. Even though a lot of the Soviet scenes were shot in Hungary and Austria, Red Heat was the first American action movie to be allowed to film in Moscow's Red Square. It wasn't a massive critical success. I mean, it did okay at the box office, but it is one of Arnie's lesser known movies, and of course, Ocean had to get the license for the tie-in game. The game was actually developed by the Liverpool-based software house Special Effects and published by Ocean. Special Effects being founded in 1987 by ex-Ocean programmers Paul Finnegan and Jonathan Joffa Smith. Now, I mentioned this in my original Red Heat review, so on the cover art for the Commodore 64, ZX Spectrum and Amstrad CPC, they've airbrushed out Belushi's cigarette. However, on the Amiga and Atari ST versions of the box, they've left it in. So I can only assume that's because maybe older kids and adults owned Amigas and STs, whereas younger kids had the 3 8-bit micros. Or maybe they just forgot to airbrush it out. I don't know. Anyway, let's get this thing loaded up. As the game loads, you're treated to this pixelated version of the movie poster, again with James Belushi's cigarette removed like on the box art. And this music sounds very familiar. After the game loads, we're presented with this colourful title screen, complete with scrolling ticker tape display advertising the home video release of the film, and a little info for the minigames. This great piece of music was by legendary musician Jonathan Dunn, who did the music for all ports of Red Heat, and you will hear this tune a lot throughout the game. Pressing fire brings up this menu where you can select between music, sound effects or just silence, and whether you want to use joystick or keyboard. The first level is set in the Russian bathhouse scene at the start of the film. You take control of Ivan Danko fighting his way through the sauna, and you'll notice the gameplay window has this pseudo film strip, giving it a widescreen look. This was probably due to the fact that the characters are meant to be naked and it's a way of censoring them, or maybe it was a way of not having to animate the lower half, saving memory and therefore allowing them to use much bigger sprites. Now this game is slow, very slow, and it'll take you around 10 minutes to reach the end of the level. Longer if you stop to play the minigames, and even longer still if you have your ass handed to you, as it puts you right back at the beginning of the level. When recording this, I got right near the end, died and got sent straight back to the start. It's a very unforgiving game. You can only defend yourself 3 ways: punch, which is slow but has a wider reach; headbutt, quick but for close range; and crouch for avoiding falling objects, projectiles and your enemy's punches. I did find myself using the headbutt move a hell of a lot, as you can easily knock out most of the goons in 1 or 2 hits. There isn't much of a heads up display, just your health bar that pops up top left every time you get hit, and when you get a gun during the next 3 levels your ammo appears top right. Also, the Red Heat logo at the bottom of the screen actually serves a purpose. So as you progress through the level, the blue logo starts to change colour, starting with red, then orange and yellow. So when you reach the end of the stage, the words are completely filled in, so it's a good indicator of how much further you have to go. Along the way you can pick up bonus items such as cans of soda to restore your energy meter, but avoid this green can, as it can make you lose control of Danko for 10 seconds and there is nothing you can do except watch as he gets pummeled into next week. And that brings me on to the bonus items that activate the minigames. So there are 4 of these sub-games. The first being inspired by the scene in which Danko gets handed a hot stone in the sauna. You have to waggle the joystick left and right until the meter reaches the top, after which Danko crushes the rock. This is so much easier on all the other versions of Red Heat, but on the C64 it's brutal. I genuinely thought I broke my joystick at one point. After fighting your way through the sauna, you make your way outside, although this time through a door and not a window. After more fisticuffs in the snow, you head on to level 2, the hospital. The first thing you'll notice about this stage, apart from the fact that Danko is still naked for some reason, is that you're walking to the left as opposed to the right. In fact, all the levels alternate between walking to the left and right. However, the other versions of the game do this, but the other way around. So for example, on the sauna level, they start on the right, going left, and so on. In this level, you finally get a gun, but use it sparingly, as you only get 8 bullets, and extra ammo is few and far between. Again, duck to avoid enemy fire from those butch nurses and the gunmen who are just off screen. In the second minigame, you have to move the joystick in all 8 directions and press fire in the correct sequence in order to complete a picture of a $100 bill, and it's harder than it looks. This is obviously from the scene where Victor Rostovili uses a torn $100 bill as a way of identifying his criminal contacts. Level 3 is the hotel where Danko stays in the movie, and what? He is still in the buff. I mean, why doesn't he just go up to his room and put on some clothes? I don't know. Maybe it's wash day tomorrow.
Nothing clean, right?
Anyway, in this level we get the third and best of the minigames in my opinion, which is reminiscent of the Sega game Bank Panic. You have 3 doors in front of you, and as each one opens, you have to quickly identify whether they're an enemy or not. Push left to shoot at the left door, right to shoot the right, and up to fire at the centre door. You have 8 tries, and these will deplete if you get shot, shoot an innocent, or shoot if there's no one in the doorway. The fourth and final minigame is also at the hotel, and that is the key puzzle. This is like one of those sliding block puzzles, and you have to move the cursor over the 2 pieces you want to switch places. Complete it within the very tight time limit, and you get a picture of the locker key that Rostovili desperately wants to get his hands on. After you've battled through the hotel, it's time for the final showdown at the goods yard. And guess what? You've guessed it, still naked. Couldn't the programmers be bothered to at least make it look like he was wearing a t-shirt or something? So there's more punching and shooting your way through waves of enemies, and once again you get the dollar bill and the locker key minigames before facing off against Victor Rostovili. Once you've defeated him and a couple of stragglers, that's it, you've beat the game. Hopefully there'll be an end screen or something. What? Stage 5? The hothouse? All that, and just like the specky version of Cobra, the game loops? Thanks, special effects. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Red Heat was also available on the Amstrad CPC, ZX Spectrum, Amiga 500 and the Atari ST, so let's see what those ports are like, starting with the Amstrad CPC. So you can probably tell that this is a specky port, and like I said earlier, all of these versions start you off on the right of the screen, walking left. Again, the sprites are huge, but the gameplay window on the CPC is tiny in comparison to the others. The enemies in this and the Spectrum version are almost cartoon-like caricatures compared to the other ports. Now, one thing that all these versions have that was missing from the C64 are people in the background. Particularly people in the sauna. Naked people. In all manner of poses. In a game aimed at kids. Even the minigame on the hotel level has this woman appear in one of the doorways with massive feet. So they removed the cigarette from the cover art, but allowed this? And while we're on the subject of weird stuff in the background, what the hell is that on level 4? By the look on his face, it appears that Thomas the Tank Engine has seen some things. Onto the Speccy version now, and the only real difference to the CPC port is the game is completely monochrome, although this is the only version that has some sort of heads-up display, showing lives remaining, the name of the level, your score, and an area that flashes up with the words pick up when you're over a bonus item. Oh, and there's this little animated Jim Belushi that dances across the screen at the start of each level, for reasons. Now for the 16-bit computers, and even though I had the Commodore 64 version when I was younger, the Amiga port, in my opinion, is the best version by far. Great graphics, great music, but most of all, it is a lot more forgiving than the 8-bit ports. And the best thing about this version is once you lose a life, you restart where you left off, not at the very beginning of the stage. Oh, and yeah, more nakedness. But after the sauna level, Danko is fully clothed. Finally, the Atari ST port, and this is basically the same as the Amiga version, but with no in-game music. And again, if you lose a life, it doesn't send you back to the start. And just like a lot of Ocean's back catalogue, this was also re-released on the Hit Squad's movie collection in 1991. In fact, this is the version I owned back in the day. Red Heat received some pretty diverse reviews from the magazines back in the summer of 1989. Zap gave the Commodore 64 65% and bizarrely scored the Amiga version a slightly lower 62%. Commodore User gave the C64 a respectable 82%, and the CPC version received only 67% from Amstrad Action. The Spectrum port was praised by Sinclair User, receiving a 78% score, but your Sinclair loved the game even more, awarding it 85%. And the Atari ST version was reviewed by ST Action, giving it 52%. So it's 35 years since I first played Red Heat on the Commodore 64, and I'm still on the fence about this. It looks impressive with those huge sprites and that memorable chiptune that still lives rent-free in my head to this day. It's not a terrible game, but at the same time, it's not great either. An action brawler that could have been and should have been so much more. It's kind of ironic how this game seems to be almost as forgotten as one of Arnold's most overlooked movies. So what did you think of Red Heat? Did you have this game back in the day? Did you manage to see any of the later levels, or, like me as a kid, not able to get off level 1? Let me know in the comments below, and if you've enjoyed this video or have a taste for nostalgia, be sure to hit that like button and consider subscribing to the channel. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care, bye!